Good morning, fellow citizens, and welcome to the 7th update under our Kuteteza Masankho election project. Over the past several weeks, TIZ has used these updates to highlight several developments that have a bearing on electoral integrity, including political violence and intimidation, electoral corruption, campaign finance, misuse of public resources, political neutrality of state institutions, and the need for transparency and accountability throughout the electoral process. With elections now taking place this week, our attention turns increasingly towards protecting citizens' freedom of choice, ensuring transparency in the final stages of the electoral process, and encouraging all stakeholders to conduct themselves responsibly before, during, and after the day of polling. In today's update, we highlight 3 issues: concerns surrounding alleged messaging linking social cash transfer benefits to electoral processes, the continued absence of legislation regulating political party financing, and the importance of citizen participation and transparency in the management of election results. TIZ has observed with concern reports that members of the public, including beneficiaries of the government's social cash transfer program, have received SMS messages encouraging or suggesting that they vote for President Hakainde Hichilema and the ruling UPND in order to protect or continue receiving their social cash transfer benefits. This information raises very serious concerns because it appears to link a statutory government social protection program to electoral support for a particular political party and candidate. TIZ, together with other civil society organizations, has already publicly called for investigations into the origin of these messages and the possible misuse of beneficiary data and government programs for electoral purposes. The Social Cash Transfer Program exists to support vulnerable Zambians and is funded through public resources. It belongs to the people of Zambia and must never ever be presented or perceived to be presented as a benefit that depends on political affiliation. Any suggestion that a citizen's continued access to a lawful social protection benefit depends on how they vote risks creating fear and exerting undue influence over vulnerable voters. The matter also raises very important questions regarding how beneficiaries' contact information may have been obtained and whether personal information collected for the administration of a government program may have been used for an unrelated political purpose. TIZ therefore reiterates its call to the Electoral Commission of Zambia, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, and the Zambia Information and Communications Technology Authority to thoroughly investigate the origin and distribution of the reported messages. Government should equally reassure beneficiaries that social cash transfer payments and other social protection entitlements will continue irrespective of how citizens vote on the 13th of August. We move on to the second issue. Now, throughout the 2026 election season, TIZ has observed considerable disparities in the financial capacity and visibility of political parties and candidates. Some political actors have been able to conduct extensive campaigns, while others have faced significant resource constraints that have affected their ability to travel, to advertise, to organize meetings, and to reach voters. These disparities once again expose a long-standing weakness in Zambia's electoral governance, which is the absence of comprehensive legislation regulating political party and campaign financing. Without clear campaign financing rules, there are no adequate requirements governing how much candidates and political parties may spend, where campaign resources originate, or the extent to which campaign income and expenditure should be disclosed to members of the public. This makes it very difficult for citizens to know who is financing those seeking public office and also what interests may potentially accompany that financial support. The absence of regulation can also deepen inequalities between and among candidates. Elections should primarily be a competition of ideas, policies, leadership, and public confidence, and not simply a competition determined by who has access to the greatest financial resources. TIZ's own campaign expenditure monitoring initiative has further demonstrated the challenge of relying solely on voluntary transparency. Of the parliamentary candidates that we have monitored, only a very small proportion have voluntarily provided information on their electoral expenditure. We commend those who have done so and encourage other candidates to embrace similar openness. TIZ therefore reiterates its long-standing call for comprehensive political party and campaign finance legislation to be enacted after these elections. Such legislation should provide for transparency of funding sources and expenditure. It should also provide for appropriate disclosure requirements, accountability mechanisms, and safeguards against illicit financing and abuse of state resources. Zambia must use the experiences of this particular election to finally address this significant gap in our electoral framework. I move on to the third issue. With polling taking place this week, TIZ encourages every registered voter to exercise their democratic right and civic responsibility by turning out in large numbers to vote. Elections ultimately belong to citizens. Whatever political party, candidate, or policy position an individual supports, the ballot provides every eligible voter with an equal opportunity to determine who governs and represents them. Citizens should therefore refuse intimidation, inducements, misinformation, or any other attempt to interfere with their independent political choice. We particularly remind citizens that the ballot is secret. No political party, candidate, government official, traditional leader, employer, or any other individual has the right to dictate how a citizen votes or to demand proof of their electoral choices. As voting concludes, attention will inevitably shift towards counting, tabulation, transmission, verification, and announcement of results. This will be one of the most sensitive stages of the entire electoral process and will require the highest levels of transparency and professionalism from the ECZ. TIZ therefore calls upon the ECZ to provide timely and regular information to the public throughout the results management process, clearly explaining any challenges that may arise, providing political party agents and accredited observers the access that is provided under the electoral framework, and ensuring that established procedures are consistently followed. Transparency at this stage will be critical in preventing misinformation, reducing unnecessary suspicion, and building confidence in the final outcome. We equally urge political parties and candidates to exercise restraint and allow established electoral processes to run their course. Supporters should avoid spreading unverified results or information that are capable of creating unnecessary tension. Where grievances arise, they must be pursued through the lawful mechanisms provided under Zambia's electoral framework. Additionally, as the nation prepares for polling day this Thursday, TIZ wishes to emphasize that the ultimate purpose of an election is to allow citizens to freely choose from among those who have presented themselves for public office. It is in this context that we are very concerned by recent calls by President Hichilema for independent candidates to withdraw from electoral contests. Now, every candidate who has satisfied the legal requirements to contest has a legitimate right to remain in the race and to present themselves for consideration by the electorate. Independent candidates are equally a legitimate part of Zambia's democratic system, and their participation expands the range of choices that is available to voters. While political actors are entitled to persuade citizens to support their parties and candidates, encouraging duly nominated independent candidates to withdraw, particularly when such calls come from an incumbent president, does lead to promote the competitive and pluralistic political environment that credible elections require. The decision about who should remain politically relevant should ultimately be made by voters in the voting booth. We therefore encourage all candidates who have lawfully entered the race to exercise their democratic rights without intimidation or undue pressure, and all political actors to respect the electorate's right to choose from the full range of candidates that are available before them. TIZ is further alarmed by the remarks made by Mr. Binwa Mpundu, the immediate past member of Parliament for Nkana constituency, to the effect that he and his colleagues in the opposition are ready to kill in relation to these elections. Now, we strongly condemn these remarks and emphasize that there is no election outcome that is worth shedding the blood of any human being, and any suggestion to that effect must be treated with the contempt it deserves. We urge law enforcement agencies to thoroughly investigate this matter, especially in view of Mr. Mpundu's subsequent statement that the said remarks were the work of hackers using artificial intelligence. While it is not our place to ascertain the truthfulness of Mr. Mpundu's subsequent statement, we wish to remind politicians across the political divide that in a heightened atmosphere such as we are in, their words have the potential to create instability and tension, and they must therefore exercise the highest restraint and self-control in their discourse with the electorate. We only have one Zambia, and we must do our best to ensure that we continue enjoying the peace for which we have been known from time immemorial. As I conclude, after weeks of preparation by political parties, candidates, election monitors, and observers, the ECZ, and indeed other stakeholders, the onus is now on all of us to ensure that we have a credible, fair, and free election. The ECZ must administer the election impartially and transparently. Law enforcement agencies must apply the law fairly. Political parties and candidates must respect the rules and accept that political competition does not make opponents enemies. The media and civil society must continue providing citizens with credible information, and citizens themselves must participate peacefully and responsibly in exercising their electoral choices at various levels of these elections. Whatever our political differences, after the 13th of August, Zambia will still belong to all of us. We therefore call upon every stakeholder to place the peace, democratic stability, and integrity of our country above partisan interests, and to allow the will of the Zambian people to prevail through a free, peaceful, transparent, and credible election. TIZ will continue monitoring the environment and the process through polling day and the post-election period, and will engage relevant institutions on observations arising from our election observation mission. We wish all Zambians a very peaceful election and encourage every registered voter to go out and make their voices heard. Thank you, and may God bless the Republic of Zambia.